welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of our conversation with Enrique Garcia and Joel Benavides. We talked for an hour and a half and broke it into 3 sections. So this is the beginning of part 2. Please enjoy.
In our case, you were right, Jeremy. I did the math, and yeah, it's about 30 acres per head. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting the difference, and you guys, relatively speaking, aren't that horribly far apart.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the increase in birth weight, and I think that's an important point that, if we're not giving cattle enough nutrition to achieve performance, right? If at least half the cattle aren't performing, it's probably a management issue, a forage issue, overstocking, something, right? That's not letting them. But once we get cattle, where at least half the herd is performing, now they separate themselves a little bit. And you talked about ankle pop in the fetlock and pastern joint in cattle and how that's a negative trait. Well, at Joel's place where the bull has to, cover 200 acres at a
A lot of
pop or
ground.
more, right?
Yeah.
And travel, and the mama cow's got to walk X miles a day just to get water. Anything that affects an ankle, a hip, a back, affects everything just like it does in people. But you went further than that, Enrique. You traced it back to a common ancestry of a crooked tree bull and a S150 cow that goes back to Kinloch genetics and that's, I mean, that's awesome that we can share that sort of information. And again, not a dig on those animals, but something to watch for. And certainly any animal that had that trait from somewhere else or in its parentage, you wouldn't want to breed that way. Which ties right into the Rotakawa stuff. You guys talked about the Rotakawa stuff, and I think what you were saying is that the heavy influence, the line bred Rotakawas, didn't perform in the South. And I know when Teddy Gentry was developing the South Pole breed, he talked to Gerald Fry and took in some line bred Rotakawas, which had big calves, had big teats, and had a lot of hair, and didn't work. But it's not the Rotakawa bloodline, right? A little Rotakawa in an animal works pretty well. Adds growth, adds meat and muscle, but we have learned that line bred piece of it works and or doesn't work. And again, it's nice that we're at a point where we can discuss that stuff openly now. But am I correctly? I mean, is that what your guys' experience
Yeah.
was?
Yeah. I mean, the law of small numbers applies to me because I'm making judgments based on, not 500 animals, but rather a couple dozen over a few years. But you're absolutely right. What I saw was that mamas that calved in the middle of the summer, I was very quickly, we're having a very, very tough time, both the mama and the calf. And what I found myself doing was trying to mitigate it by trying to time the calving, which is just not a sustainable way forward. Their answer is, well, what can calve in the middle of June or July if that's just the way things worked out? And so what I found, to my surprise, is that, yeah, you can develop a herd that is perfectly capable of calving in 102-degree humid conditions in the summer, provided everything else is in place. And but at the time, I thought that was not going to be possible. So it was a great lesson to learn that the Devon genetics can do that, and have been doing that for Joel and others. But at the time, we hadn't gotten that far.
Well, when do you guys calve, and is that what you saw as well?
In our case, but we have the bulls all year long. So yeah.
So
Uh,
you're calving all year long, and they seem to handle the middle of the summer calving just fine.
yeah, we have seen that consistent uh, birth rate on the cattle herd, and I guess that's why we are so convinced that this is the best breed that we can have in Mexico.
Enrique made a point earlier that he was smaller, but it let him give more individual attention to each cow.
Yeah.
And I think for everybody, there's a number of cattle you can manage. I can remember one time years ago, I was at a rental farm with my daughter, and I was like, "Who is that cow?" And we got closer and looked at the tag, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's 807 or whatever." I don't remember that cow. Turned out we had that cow for 2 or 3 years, and that always stuck with me because I got too many cows. I don't, if I don't know, most of my cows, I can pick them out 2 hills over just because I know them, right? Like a teacher learns their students in first week or two of school, and you're farming a lot more acres, right? A lot more cows. So not only are there more head there, but it's harder to check everybody because they're on much bigger plots of land. And I mean, what are your thoughts? How do you manage that?
Yeah, that's very interesting question, and I was paying a lot of attention to what you guys were saying. And I've been in Enrique's place, and I see that it can get very personal on each individual. I saw you teaching us, Jeremy, how to observe an animal, which was very, very valuable for us on that visit. And for us, like you said, it's way harder to do that because of the extensions of the ranch, and we do handle the holistic management aspect of it. We do rotational grazing and all that. We change, but not as frequent as we would like to. We don't have the intensive grazing management program because you need a lot of people, you need a lot of fencing, you need to do a lot of work. So we try to do it as best as possible where our cattle touch the soil at the most twice a year on it. So that's how we move the cattle around our ranch, and we make about two sales per year, and that's when we gather the cattle at the house, at the corrals, and we work with them and we do all that stuff. So, and we try to identify in about 1 to 2 month period birth rate, the animals, and we have them all identified and registered with the ear tags and all that. But to go that profound on to see, how that cow is behaving or that bull, it's quite tough for us. So we try to look at the numbers in a broader way, and base the decisions on that. Make sure that the cows are producing a calf every year and so on. But it's much tougher to go into the details of it. So we run the numbers quite differently.
Tell me, I've got a picture Enrique sent me years ago of his daughter riding a little Henry bull, and I've ridden several of my bulls over the years. I mean, there's lots of stories of the docility of Devons on small farms, small ranches where people are a lot more hands-on, like Enrique is. How does obviously your cattle don't see people as much, they're not handled as much.
Yeah.
How big of a difference does disposition play in Devon cattle and the other breeds of cattle that you had before? How's that impacted your herd?
Oh, that's a huge difference. We've seen huge differences. I remember having a long time ago when I was a teenager, limousine bulls, and they didn't behave the way our Devon bulls behave. We also had some Herefords, which were calm, but but they were not able to adapt to our land. And forget about Brahmas. Brahmas are the toughest ones. They're very nervous, and so that's what we love so much about Devon, aside from many other aspects of it and benefits that it has. When we decide to move the herd from one pasture to another one, we always, we just call them. We start yelling at them, and they all come by. They know they're gonna be moved to a different pasture. So for us, it's very easy. And when we're working with them on the corrals and all that, it's very easy to handle them. That's when we know we have the perfect breed.
Well said. Well said. Um, my father brought in 3 Brahma cows because there was a Bravon breed that was being developed, a Brahma Devon cross. And I was I was probably 8 or 10 years old, and I went in the barn. One of these cows had calved, and she was charging the pen, and she was solid white with bright red eyes, the scariest daggone thing I'd ever laid eyes on. And she wanted to kill me. I mean, she was, and you said it right, nervous, but nervous equates to crazy and dangerous, and like that picture behind Enrique, you're not gonna put your kids out there with those other cattle. It's in fact, the biggest problem some people have with Devons is if you get them too quiet, they can become a little bit dangerous too,
Mm.
because they're just so big. But beware of the bottle raised calf, right?
Yeah.
At 800 pounds, it
I
comes
think
looking
you, I
for a
think you,
bottle.
yeah, you're right, Jeremy. I mean, I think underscoring though the docility is probably, arguably, I'm sure we can argue it, one of, if not the most distinguishing trait of Devon, at least with cattlemen and ladies that are familiar with livestock. When they see it, and if you can put them in a setting where they get to see it for themselves, it can be that predominant trait that just sells them on the spot, and they see it, and it's just because when you've seen the alternative, like you said, um, it's kind of like horses, I think the kids horseback riding up in the mountains, and we go chase elk every year. And at first, everybody wants to pick the horse that looks the prettiest, and it's not long before nobody really cares what they look like. It's like it, yeah, it's amazing how much more enjoyable uh, it is to work with cattle that are docile. And anyhow, I've learned with prospective clients to let them experience that for themselves. And yeah, you don't even have to say anything.
Well, you said earlier about Joel, about your father and having health issues, and people who have had health problems and fine Devon beef are sold forever. People who have had a bull try to kill them, and then they experience what Enrique just talked about. I've had people wouldn't get out of the truck. We're doing a farm tour, and I get out and I'm like, come on, let's go look at. Oh no, there's a bull over there. Like there's a cow with horns over there. Well, that cow ain't gonna bother you. Um, but as Enrique said, you have to experience it. And in your case, you've got again more animals that see people less. Well, when you think about animals that are going to processing and the effects of stress and cortisol in the animal's blood and how that affects overall meat quality, they a lot of things over the years that points to quieter animals have more tender and better beef. And whether that's a genetic trait or an effect of that stress and cortisol, I haven't seen a definitive answer, but um, you guys, neither one of you are really selling meat in any capacity. You're mostly selling animals to others on the meat side of it. Any idea where that meat goes or where it ends up?
Enrique, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, I mean, like I said, I got a small herd. I got 10 kiddos, as you know, Jeremy. So we consume anything that makes the coldest ends up in our fridge and freezer. But I tell you one thing I've learned though is with anybody, with any prospective client, if they come visit the farm, they don't leave without 4 or 5 pounds of Devon 100% grass fed beef that grew up right there in our backyard. And that's a huge selling point because you're putting your mouth, you're just proving to them what it is that they would be buying into, and they could take that home and try it for themselves. And but yeah, for Joel, different story, right? It's a commercial operation, and that beef, I don't know, Joel, where does it go?
Yeah, that's a good question. In our family, we do take advantage of the high quality of the grass-fed animals that we have for our consumption. But for the rest of it, yeah, they go, unfortunately, I would say, they go the traditional way. There are always people knocking on our doors wanting our breed because they have been behaving extremely well, even in the traditional way of going into the feedlots and so on. But and I said unfortunately because that's one of our goals, and Enrique mentioned it at the beginning, we have to be patient, everything takes time, but our goal is absolutely to try to create a market, and go direct selling to anyone interested in high quality, healthy food, but we haven't been able to accomplish that yet. And it was one of my father's dreams as well. I even remember, registering some of the website domains that he would love to have and sell through those channels. I remember one of them was in Spanish, of course, but it was like beyond organic, things like that concepts that he would like to tell the Mexican people about it. But one of the interesting aspects of it as well is that Mexico is, I guess, 20 years or so behind, other countries, Europe and US, where the knowledge and the culture about the health, it's way more advanced. And this is funny because it's way more advanced, but at the end, they're going back to basics, back to common sense, back to where things should always have stayed, but it's hard for people, Last night I saw a guy, African American guy who had some cattle in the US, and he was proving to some of his peers, the difference between the yellow fat against the white fat. He was explaining that to them, and I was like, oh my gosh, when will the Mexican people understand that concept? How long is it going to take? I don't know. Technology is helping a lot. A lot of the information, you can get it quite faster than it used to. But still, we haven't been able to accomplish that goal of selling directly, Jeremy.
How difficult is it to ship a tractor trailer load of feeder animals from Mexico into the U.S.? Is that a
But
process that's too difficult to make it worth it?
That's a good question as well. We haven't got that into that route. I think the easiest way to do that is to sacrifice the animals in Mexico in a certified area and then send the packages ready, because if you take live animals, it's a whole different story. And I do know that right now, some of the Mexican states are prohibited from sending cattle into the U.S. because of a tick issue or something like that.
it's crazy to me just because I'm turning away people on a daily basis looking for feeder cattle, but also breeding females at this point. And what we have sold and what others have sold is for the highest prices we've gotten maybe ever recently. So it's a wonderful thing. But when we see cattle that are done right, that are going into just into a feedlot with everything else, um,
It's sad.
it is sad, and we're the feedlot's loving it because they're getting highly efficient, quiet
Yeah.
cattle with a higher quality grade of meat that are going to finish quicker. And
Yeah.
I mean, my dad fed cattle in the feedlots for years just because that was the only way we could get ultrasound and carcass data back on the animals was to feed them that way. And year in and year out, our cattle finished quicker than everybody else's, graded higher than everybody else's. But because we never hit a 1,400 pound carcass, we didn't qualify for any premium. So we got the least amount of money,
Yeah.
and they made out, and we got the data we wanted. But there's a lot of value in Devon cattle in a feedlot situation. That efficiency and the disposition and the quality grade are all huge. Um, I wanted to we're getting close on time. Um, so I wanted to hit you guys both with we've talked about disposition, and um, we've kind of talked about the traits that you guys are looking for in cattle. Um, Advice for somebody getting started. Um, and if we've already touched on it, uh, go to your next piece of advice. But Enrique, if somebody called you up and they've had some commercial cattle for a few years and want to go Devon, what advice would you give to them?
I think we've touched on a lot of it. Trying not to go back to something we've already said, but enjoy the process and the journey. Don't overcommit. Watch over selecting for a particular trait. Then again, you can't select based on 20 different traits. So which ones are the most important? Start somewhere, be definitive, and then you can always pivot as opposed to being way too narrow or way too wide in your selection criteria.
I like that. That's an answer that I give people. It confuses them more than it. They got to go back and listen to that probably two or three times. But there's a lot of wisdom in there. Thank you, Joel. What about you? Somebody was getting ready to. I'm going to change your question a little bit. I'm a big rancher in Mexico, 1,000 miles away from you, and I want to integrate Devon cattle into my operation. What advice would you give me?
Yeah. I will invite them to my ranch to see it firsthand, how docile they are, how well they behave, how how well have they been able to adapt to this harsh circumstances. And I will tell them to, to enjoy the process, be patient, and expect the best results, because that's what we have seen.
That's awesome, and I like all of that. I really like the go see somebody else's cattle, right? If I'm in Montana, go visit other Montana breeders or as close to that as you can. Cattle will perform better. I sent you guys cattle, but if you could have got the same cattle right there in Texas or Mexico, you wouldn't have come to Virginia. And and I hope that's where we get the breed, where there's high quality cattle everywhere. And with these high prices right now, that's one of the negatives is people are inclined to keep poor quality females and then sell those to new breeders. So um, as both you guys said, do your homework. Um, and be patient with if the guy has to have you take them right now, there might be something he's not telling you. But a lot of
Hmm.
people, a lot of good breeders in this breed right now. There's um, a lot of unity, and I think some people, are better cattlemen than others, and that means some people might sell you something with a problem unintentionally. It also means you might get a heck of a deal from somebody that doesn't know quite how good an animal they have. But if you meet all the breeders and talk to different people and go to events, you can sort through pretty quickly. Um, and generally, people are very open to you coming to their farm and seeing what they got. And um, I think that's great advice. Well, before we wrap up, you guys have anything that you'd like to talk about, put out there that I haven't directed us to? Um, I'm going to rewatch this and go, man, I wish we'd have gone deeper there and deeper there. But I think we've covered a lot, and it's been great. But do you have any questions for me before we call it?
I think if anybody's watching, Jeremy, that Texas is a big state, but even Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, if anybody's watching that wants to strengthen our local network and just know who's who that's committed and to Devon, then yeah, I encourage them to reach out to you or me, and we'll make those connections.
Well,
In my case, Jeremy, if you guys, I mean, if you find some other uh, questions or areas of information that you would like to get, I'll be more than glad to have a part two later on. What I'm always open. You're more than welcome also to come and visit us at any time. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information to share always, and we always learn from everybody.
what can we do to help you with Devon's in Mexico from I mean either me personally but the Red Devon USA organization, is there something we can be doing to support and help you get the word out? And I mean, what would be, obviously everybody would love it if we could send them a check for a lot of money and they could, but how can we, um, how can we support you? What can I do to push the envelope? And I mean, Devon's in Mexico is good for Devon's in the U.S. It's good for Devon's internationally.
Yeah.
And again, there's this stigma of Devon cattle not working in the heat, and uh, you guys are both a
Oh, yeah.
testament to that. Not every animal works in every situation, right? But the Devon is the most adaptable animal bovine animal on the planet. I mean, they're thriving everywhere.
Absolutely, Jeremy. No, I have always felt the support from the Red Devon Association. Thank you for that. And I guess we need to work on our side first to try to increment the registered Devons that we have, because like Enrique mentioned, most of our cattle are, even though they are 95% Devon, they're still on the commercial side of it. So we need to work on the pure lines. We have about 40 or 50 of them. We need to work on that. We really want to focus on trying to improve that in order to offer more to the Mexican market. Right now, we're still trying to get the best out of ourselves and then go outside and see how we can help other cattlemen in Mexico or in Texas or anywhere. Which, by the way, I remember I tried to, I spoke with him or text him a couple of times, a good cattleman from Brazil. I'm sure you know this person, Enrique, it's his name. And so he's a very nice guy. He has an amazing operation there. I was trying to bring some of the genetics into Mexico, but unfortunately, Mexico and Brazil don't have an agreement right now with the bringing with the cattle aspect of it. So I haven't done anything about that yet, but we're still trying to improve our our registered cattle within us.
Are you familiar with the Devon X registry?
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah, so the Devon X is it's like $5 an animal. There's not DNA required, and it's for an animal that's at least 50% Devon or more. But in your case, to show that an animal's 90% Devon, 95% Devon, one, in Mexico, it's extremely hard to get purebred Devon cattle, right? And
Yes.
anybody that wants any serious numbers, but even in this country, people come to me and they want to buy cattle. The first question I ask them is, are you doing this for high quality grass-fed meat production only? Or are you trying to get into purebred? Do you want to be a seed stock producer and produce animals? Because, you know, you can almost buy 2 for 1 in a high percentage Devon versus a purebred Devon. And somebody that wants to jump in with 60 head of cattle and get going, buy 5 or 10 purebreds, buy 40 or 50 of those high percentage animals. And and I'm not trying to push one or the other. It doesn't matter to me what people do, but if you're just trying to produce high quality grass fed beef, those high percentage Devon animals.
We'll do a
And
good job.
I would even argue that your high percentage Devon animals are going to work better for a guy in Mexico than the ones he brings from Virginia or wherever,
Yeah.
halfway across the continent. And I mean, Enrique, speak to that. Well, both of you guys speak to that. The when you move cattle from anywhere down to Texas, how long? If I brought 10 heifers or 10 cows down to you that were bred, how would you expect? How many would have no
Yeah,
problem at all? How many would fall apart? How long would it take them to adapt?
Jeremy, I haven't seen any fall apart, but I have seen them where it takes the older they are, the longer it takes, but it can take 2 years for them to just have that sheen that the rest of the herd has. I
The
don't know what it
older
is.
they
You
are, the
probably know
longer
better than
it
I do.
takes.
The older they are, the longer it takes.
Interesting.
And yeah, and I don't know what Joel saw. I mean, that was a drastic change. I'm gonna have to bolt. It'd be great to get that from him because you talk about shocking animals, even from South Texas. Even from here where I'm at, to all of a sudden cutting the rein in half and multiplying the amount of miles they got to walk by an order of magnitude. I'd be curious, and I'll watch the podcast because I got to go to listen to his answer. How long did it take? You've imported now, I don't know, probably a dozen or more purebreds, and are developing the purebreds within your ranch in order to feed your commercial operation, which I think is awesome. It's kind of the best of both. How long did it take for them to adapt? And I got to go. Thank you, Jeremy, for doing this for me, and I'll listen to your answer.
We're going to end part 2 right there. Enrique had to leave us and take a business call that was set up. We originally filmed this, again, it was an hour and a half, so we broke it into 3 sections. Join us for part 3, where me and Joel continue on and discuss Devons in Mexico. Thank you.